Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts.
Archlector George.
And Harrison, the Adeptus Historical.
We continue our coverage of Last Argument of Kings, the third book in the original trilogy. And for this episode, we'll be covering sacrifices. So, let's get started. As usual, you know that we want to thank you all for your support. We like to shout out the artists that have helped create some cool little art for us to use. I think it was the little banner that we put on for our videos. And just
on Instagram.
On the grams. And just want to remind you all to continue to follow us on social media and our YouTube page. We've gotten some recent followers and feedback I think I've seen. We haven't actually put on the ads like we said we were going to.
We waited too long.
Yeah.
And they expired.
Due to our delayed deliberation, Buzzsprout said "fuck y'all" and removed the options, the opportunities, the offers from our from us. So yeah.
So it's just like a forewarning, like an ad will probably appear at some point, like in the next month or two.
Watch us never get another ad offer.
Yeah, we'll never get anything ever again.
Yeah, before they offered us like 1.4 cents per download. Now it's gonna go back to like half a cent or something like that.
Yeah, because the first one was 0.5%, wasn't it?
I think so, something like that. I'm like, you had your chance. So yeah, but a few people did actually reach out to us on our various platforms, and it seemed like the majority of you were okay with us putting on ads. So we're gonna go ahead and do that, just so to cover the cost of hosting the podcast on a server. So yeah. So we'll go ahead before doing that. Harrison, George, you want to bring up anything to the attention of the listeners before we move on to the chapter read through?
I mean, looking at some stats here, like I've recently figured out how to use Spotify for podcasters, and there's some very good stats on there. It seems like lately we've had a massive increase. I mean, this last Thursday and Friday, it's like a combined 600 listens over the weekend, so that's actually quite a big weekend for us. So
Praise
thank
the
you so
algorithm.
much for joining. Praise the algorithm.
Spurs.
Before it nerfs us right into the ground. But no, it's good. It's good. We're getting more and more people listening, and across all the episodes as well, which means that people are, they keep it up, which is fantastic.
Welcome.
You've made it this far. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you've navigated the apparent mess that is the Apple Podcast list that me and George just found out about today, we are going to fix that. Apparently, our shit is not in order. So
that's quite bad.
So
actually, it might be helping.
Yeah, I actually don't think. I think Spotify's carrying all the way. Maybe we'll see. We'll figure that out. And maybe if listeners, if you are witnessing some weird like
tomfoolery,
incongruence over there on Apple Podcasts, please let us know. And I haven't been as
diligent.
I guess diligent. You're just gonna keep shouting out one words. God damn it.
Maybe.
Just because I have been for a few months now, I've been like looking. I've been adjusting to a new job and looking for a place to live. The new job has been adjusted. Got offered full time. Yay me! And the place to live has been situated. Just I won't be able to move in for a few more weeks, so I'm still kind of like living under an overpass. So once that gets situated and I get settled, and then I bring my babies over, my ferrets, and everything is nice and pretty, your boy is back in action. All right? Yeah. Now.
You're not going to mention how I've been doing all the editing.
Yep. No, George has been such a goddamn
hero.
He really has. This motherfucker. He's been such a hero. Besides, fucking up on Apple Podcasts. I mean, you can't have everything in the world. So, but he's been.
I mean, I think that's just the great consistency that the listeners have come to expect from us.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that's
the show, everyone. Come back and see us next time.
I can't say enough about George. He's been great. Harrison, said he was going to do documentaries and battle analysis videos. Hasn't done jack shit. So,
That's
whatever.
a lie. I just haven't done it in a while. I'm worn out, Jeffrey. We just talked about this.
I know. I'm
Damn,
sorry.
I mean, what
bro.
about you, Jeff? Jeff, we haven't seen your funny skit video that you showed us when we came to visit you.
Did I
Oh God,
not?
we're
Did I
devolving
not?
into hatred.
Did I not just give a whole fucking soliloquy about what has been going on in my life? You fucking turn into William Shakespeare on stage over here, and you're like, "Oh, what did you say anything?" William Shakespeare from the Hood, actually. Sorry.
All right.
All right. So let's get going. Let's get going on the chapter read through. And here we start off and are just gonna do sacrifices, just because there's a lot that's happening here. And we start off with the perspective of Dogman. And here he's squeezing through the gate of Adwa, with a bunch of other Northmen. And as soon as he enters the gate, starts running down the streets with Grim and all of them, he comes across this gentleman who apparently has a wide smile on his face and is just handing out bread. Dogman's like, "What?" And it's freshly baked. It's warm. He breaks it apart. That nice little when you break apart a loaf of bread. And he hands it to Grim, and he's like, "What's all that about? Who is he?" And Grim just goes, "I don't know, a baker." And
I love that the baker's just like, thank you, friend. He's just fucking.
yeah, he sees these savage Northmen just barreling into his town. He's like, "Yes, I have been saved." And it's like,
What
even
a
though
good guy, though. Like,
yeah,
he's he knows he can't fight, but he's supporting the city in his own way.
Yes,
yeah,
every man must do their part, right?
Yeah, baking bread is part of that. You can't eat flour.
no.
Army marches on that stomach,
And I like how, even though the Union had just been at war with the North, Baker's not like, "Hey, aren't those our enemies?" Nope, just welcome them with open arms. Because, listen, you take whatever allies you can get, I guess, in that point, that point in time.
Well,
So-
plus, in most times during history, whenever there'd be an army entering a city, most of the time citizens would be like, "Oh, we love you. You're our heroes," no matter who they were, because they didn't want to
Right.
get
They didn't want to
pillaged.
Yeah, I was gonna say pillaged too. Oh, that pillaging, such an unpleasant experience. And then they
Let's put it mildly.
It definitely is. And then they get to this gentleman that's, I don't know, he's standing on top of a cart and he's like directing people. He's like, "8th Regiment, you go that way. The 5th Regiment, what the fuck are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be on the east side." Whatever. He's just like losing his shit. And then Dogman's like, "What about us? We're Northmen." Well, at least that's Logan. I'm sorry. Logan says that. And then the guy just kind of like stares at him. He's like, just get the fuck in there. I don't know. If you see a Gurkish, then kill him. I don't know. And then Logan's like, we're not gonna get any kind of sense of direction or like any idea what to do. So he points at this great tall tower that's poked. It must have been built on a hill. I'm assuming
House of the Maker.
the House of the Maker.
I love how that's Dogman's first instinct. Like every big building he's ever seen, it was big because it was built on a hill.
Right.
So he's just like, "Oh, that's huge. That must be a big hill."
Yeah. So Logan points at the House of the Maker, from what we can infer, and he says, "If we get split up, we'll aim for that." And then he just goes down the street. And then Dogman goes after, and then Grimm's behind him, and Shivers and all his boys, Red Hat, everybody, right? And then it starts getting quiet, right? There's not a lot of action here. And Dogman is he kind of catches up to Logan, I think, and he goes, "Jesus, these are like palaces." And Logan laughs. And he goes, "You think this is something? You should see the Agrion we're going to. What they got over there. Carleon's a pigsty." Dogman is thinking that Carleon was a bit too much built up, and now this is just goddamn ridiculous. And so then he kind of drops back, right, until he finds himself walking next to Shivers, and then he takes the loaf of bread and he tears it off like a half, and he gives it to Shivers, and Shivers starts eating. He's like, "Oh, thanks, not so bad." And then Dogman takes it. Dogman's so funny here. He goes, "Ain't nothing quite like it, is there? That taste of new bread tastes like peace, I guess."
But hang on though. Actually, let's think about this for a second.
Uh-huh.
I think he's right.
Okay.
I think he's right too. I mean, like, imagine being in like the woods in the wilderness for like 7 years. This might have been the first time he's had bread in that
And
long.
yeah, and in a
Uh,
very long time. Yeah.
yeah, maybe.
I mean, like, there's not gonna be really, you're gonna have some people making bread in their home, but not like a proper like loaf fresh out of an oven, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, just some
And
stale ass bread or moldy cheese.
yeah, some stale
Some
spread or
shitty barley bread or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
something that just rise. It's not even baked, whatever. Uh, so it probably and he says it tastes like peace. I mean, I'm just saying, like, what's that thing that any kind you see anytime you see people like coming home from from war or whatever into the TV shows and books and whatever, they always eat bread because you don't get fresh bread out in the field,
Mm. There's
Well,
definitely that symbolism attached to it, isn't there?
yeah,
Yeah,
you have that thing where enemies break bread. That means like to come to
yes,
peace.
there's that too. Yeah, exactly.
Which is interesting because that is, I think that's what Dogman's doing when he talks about that, because he's immediately then goes on to Shivers and says, I think you need to, you know, forgive the guy that butchered your brother. And
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what Dogman's doing here. He says that, and then Shiver goes, "If you say so," and doesn't say. They're just quiet, and then Dogman at this point goes, "I think you need to put this feud behind you." And he acts dumb. He goes, "What feud is that?" And he goes, "Man, how many do you think you got? The one you got with 9 fingers." And Shivers, he says, he can't say he hasn't tried, but whenever he turns around, there it is right next to him, like the I guess the blood feud. And Dogman, he tells Shivers, he goes, Listen, Shivers, you're a good guy. I like you. We all do. You got balls, and you're smart, and men will follow you. You can go a long way if you just don't get yourself killed, and that's the problem. I don't want to see you start up something you can't put a good end to." And then Shivers goes, "You don't need to worry. Anything I start, I'll make sure I finish." And he goes, First of all, buddy, buddy, buddy,
It's a
we
bloody
just saw
nine.
the Bloody Nine take out Fenris the Feared. Like, come on, unless you shiv him in the back or something. I don't know, Shivers. Um, but Dogman makes a good point. He goes, that's not the point. Maybe you come out on top, maybe you don't. But either way, it's not a victory because once you kill him, you're probably gonna piss off somebody else. Maybe he pisses off Dogman, and that's another blood feud. The point is, it isn't too late for him. It's not too late for Shivers to be better than that. And Trevor just kind of just doesn't say anything, frowns at him, and then he tosses the bread away. How dare he? And he just sets off without another word. And Dogman just goes, "Some things you just can't, you can't be put right." And so that's unfortunate. It looks like Shivers is not necessarily getting over some things. I
Yeah.
mean, look, it's his brother. I mean, come on, it's been a long time ago. Who cares? Well,
I think it's interesting that Dogman has now reached the point where he's not saying don't do a blood feud, no, don't follow this blood feud because you're gonna die. Don't do it because it's the wrong thing to do. Do it because it's stupid overall. It's a waste of time. If you don't let it go, it's only gonna cause more problems. Like he's matured and evolved to that point that not very many other people have, and he's not saying it just to just to save his life or whatever. He's doing it because he sees that there's potential. Like it's not too late for him. So I just like that, Dogman. It's hard to realize, like, especially for a second time reading, and especially if you're used to a lot of other fiction, where most characters are like this naturally. Everyone is pretty a nice, good person who knows that doing revenge is wrong. But in the first law, Dogman is like one of the few people who are like, no, I think we're okay. I mean, um, even Three Trees is like, yeah, we're gonna get revenge for Thorley. So I just think it's interesting how Dogman has evolved at this point. You don't really appreciate him until several times reading through it. I feel like.
I think you're absolutely right, Harrison. I think Dogman is the character that has come on almost the most, even though he's probably got the fewest amount of chapters and the fewest amount of like proper story moments. I think there's
Yeah,
so many things that happen to him, and he just ruminates on it, and he's like the voice of reason, isn't he?
yeah,
exactly.
yep, yes, he is. Tries to be. Then so they come out of the maze and they come up to a river. We I don't know what river this is specifically. Harrison, do you know?
They don't actually, as far as I know, they never actually say. But we know that there are canals that force the river back out into the ocean, like in big cities nowadays, anyways. So I assumed always that that there was at least one river, possibly two, judging by the fact that they talk about so many different canals in Adua later on, like in the Age of Madness. So
Okay.
I mean, I think that's quite interesting, actually, that nobody ever mentions the name of the river. I mean, nobody calls. You don't go to New York and go, "Oh, it's the Hudson." Like
I
it's
mean,
just
you
the river.
do. No,
I
you
mean,
call.
maybe in New York, haven't I? Fine. If you go to London,
Come on,
The Thames.
it's
You
not
don't
the
call it
Thames.
the
It's
Thames?
just the river.
You don't call it the Thames? That's a damn lie. I don't believe
I
you.
mean, if you're talking about like in a geographical context, maybe, but otherwise it'd be like, oh yeah, no, you just go over the river,
Okay. All right, I got
It's
you.
true.
I see what you
Where
mean.
in Tulsa there's a river, and no one ever calls it what it is. Everyone just says the river because that's the only river all the way around. So
What's the river's name?
I think it's the Arkansas River.
Arkansas. Well, that's y'all confused. And
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Things are named before you get the entire idea of them.
Sure.
I bet your parents wouldn't have called you Jeff if they knew what an idiot you're going to turn out to be.
I think they probably knew I was gonna be exactly this kind of idiot. Like this motherfucker is not even really Portuguese. We're just giving him the most American name. Get him the fuck out of here. So anyway, Dogman sees this river and he's astounded because he's to him this is just as big as the White Flow, except it has stone on the banks. As in, we know that they've built this up as a moat. And then he sees a bridge that's huge, and he looks up and down the river, and he sees that there's a shitload more bridges. He's astounded as to the scale, as to like.
Oh, that's right, because this isn't a river. It's Dogman's perspective. It's a moat. He just sees this big old body of water and is like, "Oh, that's a river. Oh,
Right.
that's weird."
That's
It's not a river at all. There is maybe one or two rivers that go into the city, but this is the moat around Arnold's Wall.
Yeah, it's threw us for a loop, the idiots we are. So then, so they're all gawping, even Grim, and he goes, Shiver says, Jesus, have you ever seen? Nah, he didn't say, geez, he said, bloody hell. You ever seen the like of that? And Dogman goes, He goes, they got so much here. Why would they even want bloody Angland? Place is a shithole. And then Logan says, that couldn't say. Some men always want more, I guess. And there we'll pause real quick. We'll switch over to our next segment, which is best meme of the week. Georgie boy, take it away.
So we have our good friend Tamil will return to answer for this one. She's absolutely brilliant. It's the bit from Avengers Endgame or Infinity War. I can't remember which, but when he goes to battle and like we don't do that here. It's like me opening the blade itself to see what the maps look like. Joe, we don't do that here.
Very, very true.
Which is absolutely brilliant because it threw me for a loop the first time. I was so frustrated the first time reading these books as like a 15-year-old going, "Where's the map? I need a map so I can orient myself. I know where I am."
I know. I like to do the same thing.
Yeah, that was me too. I was confused. I was like, so how do I know like where we're at? I know I want to know.
It could be that we're just map obsessed, all of us.
So what? You saying that like it's a bad thing?
Maps are cool, bro.
Maps are dope, man. Okay, you want to have anything else to talk about that meme, Georgia boy? You think
I think that's all good.
Yeah, you don't want to address.
I'm not gonna complain about Tamil being, and I'm not gonna say that I'm being a favorite. I don't take favorites, and it's the only meme on the fucking sub this week. I swear to God.
Okay, so step it up, people. Step it up. We need more meme options, please.
Yes, we need more, and make sure you sign up for the Best Served Cold meme in every chapter, which is coming soon.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Gotta get a credit to our boy Sir Spaceman, right?
Absolutely, he's the one that started the whole absolutely silly House of the Meme Maker community, which is brilliant.
Yeah,
we all appreciate that.
Yep, we that's his domain, and we're just happy to be a part of it. All right, so we'll move back to our chapter read through, and we pick up from Gloctus' perspective, and he repeats this is the start of what Joe starts to do, like in the later half of this book and in his later books, where he kind of does this thing where he is like, oh, different forms of continuations, uh, and in this case, it's a continuation of what the previous POV had just said. It's just like these small details, but I love the idiosyncrasies of like the different authors. And Joe, he does so many of these different kinds that I love it. And so Glockta goes. Logan had said some more. Oh, some men just always want more, and Glockta says in his first sentence, some men always want more. Hey, brother Longfoot. Hey, I spared your other foot. I spared your life. Now you want freedom? I mean, how much more?
He's just being so cruel. There's no reason for this.
He doesn't even have like an inner monologue like, oh, I'm such a bad guy. He's just being an ass.
He's just being an asshole.
Yes, and brother Longfoot, he's begging. He's like, Superior, I listen. You did undertake to release me, so I held up my end of the bargain. That door is gonna open up to a square not far from the House of Questions. I swear. And Glockta goes, "We shall see." And one of the henchmen is breaking it down with the axe, and some daylight spills through. Glockta looks out, and he goes, huh? Well, yeah, we're right by the House of Questions, just as promised. And Longfoot goes, Superior? And Glockta goes, what's the harm? Very well, let him go. But it would be wise if I never saw you again. And Longfoot goes, I had the same idea. Peace. Pew! And I always like had the like imagery of like the Roadrunner running away from Wile E. Coyote, just pew, just a cloud of dust.
Limping as fast as he can down that sewer.
Right. So not maybe dust, maybe just gravel and Glockta.
And shit.
And so Glockta then turns to Casca and he goes, please tell me you've brought the things. And I like Casca's little retort here. He says, I'm untrustworthy, not incompetent. All right, boys, let's black up, which is what?
Yeah, I had a double take when I was listening to the chapter earlier. I was like, what?
Whoa. What does this mean? They got like charcoal ash? What's going on here? Oh, no. They just got a lot of clothing to dress up.
They're going to start a minstrel group.
A minstrel? Oh my god. They're gonna do they're gonna do the first law version of a barbershop quartet or something and just do it in blackface. It's awful. Anyway.
It's full of a bunch of paint. Jesus Christ.
So they break out the clothing. They're supposed to dress up as practicals. They're gonna obviously, pass off as practicals. And Casca, he looks at his hat, and he goes, "Can I keep it?" And this is the most flamboyant hat ever. Remember from the previous chapters. And Glockta just simply says no. And Casca goes, "Well, you're a hard man, Superior, and I love you for it." And he just tosses that hat. And then he looks at Artie and he goes, "Well, what about her?" Glockta easily says, "Well, she's a prisoner, a spy in league with the Gurkish."
I love how he just instantly like he already has like a solution.
Yeah. I guess he just looked at she's just a tiny bit like darker than your average person in Agile, and he goes, "Gotta be Kantic. Gotta be a spy." So
she's just tan. Oh, obviously the enemy.
And Glockta just tells her to look scared, and she goes, "Yeah, that's not an issue." And so Glockta says, "Okay, we need to move. Let's go." Boom. Now we cut to another perspective. It's a west perspective, and he says, "We need to move." Boom. All right. Have we cleared the docks? Where the fuck is Polder? And Brent, he comes up. He goes, "No one seems to know, man. I don't know." And so they're in the docks, right? Then they're trying to clear through. It's like it's just chaos. There's everything's backed up, and nothing. There's no organization whatsoever. And they're trying to make room for Lord Marshall. That's Pike's job. He's out here roaring at the top of his lungs. And then they come across Jallenhorn, who has a cut across his forehead. But he seems to be okay. He got this. He by hitting his head on a piece of wood on a timber, I guess, like with writing down his little writing on the charge.
Yeah.
And so he asked him about so Wes asks Jallenhorn about any progress, and he tells him that they're forcing him back towards the western side of the city, and that Croy's cavalry have made it to the four corners, but the Gurkish still have the Agriants well surrounded, and now they're regrouping, and they're counterattacking from the west. So a lot of Croy's foots are still all caught up in the streets on the other side of the river, and they need to get reinforcements soon. And then West just kind of snaps. He just goes, "I need to speak to General Polder. Where the hell is Polder? Brent!" And then he goes, "Sir, take a couple of these fellows and find Polder and bring his ass here right away, in person." Brent says, "Sir, yes, sir." Boom, goes. And then he asks, I believe, Jallenhorn about what's going on at sea. Ask about Admiral Reutzer, right? Reutzer?
Yes.
Okay. And then he goes, as far as he's aware, he's engaged the Gurkish fleet, but he has no idea how. And then then they turn a corner, and he goes, "Bloody hell!" And I guess they actually got to the docks themselves, and they have been turned basically into just cinders, right? Just it's a wasteland.
Joe paints a picture here, which always reminds me of the scene. I don't know if you guys have watched the Star Wars: The Clone Wars, but whenever Obi-Wan goes outside the door and on Mandalore, and there's just complete chaos with guys. Everybody's fighting each other. There's explosions and fire and corpses, and it's kind of like that scene. Like we'd get this wide angle of the harbor. There's ships all over the place burned down. There's not that many wharves left. Men are littered all around all over the place. Union, horses, Gurkish. Ships are still fighting in the distance and clashing against one another. They're fighting on the other side of the docks. It's just like it's pure chaos, and it's like an overwhelming picture because like how do you even like organize that?
And it's just like how Wes says, like he doesn't actually need to know what's going on. He just needs to look like he knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So that his men don't lose confidence in him.
Yeah, for morale.
For morale's sake.
And then they do see that there is a ship that's larger than the others, and they're seeing some other ships around that are not Union or Gurkish, and they appear to be unusually Styrian ships. They are bearing the Black Cross of Talons. So there's a big old ship, and we've actually seen it before, and it was a big old warship. It's way bigger than the others, and it plows through a Gurkha ship, and then starts to come up in the harbor, up to one of the last docks, and it's got, like I said, the Black Cross of Talons, and everyone's like, "What the hell?" But I love it whenever he's coming up there, and whenever they're coming up into the harbor, because Pike says nothing good ever comes from Talons, which is most Styrian cities have these little names or these little things about each of them.
Mantras, yeah.
Mantras. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "What the hell are the Styrians doing here?" And it does look like they're helping the Union. They're fighting against the Gurkish. And then West basically has down that they're gonna set their headquarters up there to make sure that they are, have a point of headquarters that way everybody can come to them to figure out what they need to do. And then he tells Jallenhorn to go find General Croy and to keep heading north and west towards the Agriant. And he's like, "Where's Bloody Polder? Where is he?"
Yeah.
And it's funny because he also then of course he says the thing he's been saying off and on, which is each man must do his part, which is just what Burr said. So he's just like, I gotta make sure I look like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that he does like have this kind of mind for logistics as well. Like it's like get the fucking docks cleared so that we can get some ships in here and get some more men unloaded. Like he's actually making good decisions, despite the fact he tells himself he doesn't know what he's doing.
Right. Yeah. He's still on top of things there for sure.
We saw how good he was at logistics in the blade itself and inside of before they're hanged. He's actually it's like I would say it's his biggest strength as a general, because especially compared to a lot of Union generals, you need that scale of how many men they have and how much equipment. They need to have good logistics, and a lot of the Union guys are just like, charge. So,
Very true. Very true. Very true.
so
And after he just yells out loud for someone to find General Polder. A procession starts coming down the quay there, or quay, whatever you call it. No,
Key.
quay. No, it's
It's a
QUAY.
key.
It's a
Yeah, it's
key.
a key.
Really?
It's a
yeah, it's a
key.
key. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. British English.
All
And
right, it's not my fault.
That's
and then so this procession is full of a dozen guards in black armor, and they're all flanking one single man. And he has black hair streaked with gray, a pointed beard, immaculately trimmed. He has black boots, fluted breastplate of black steel, cloak of black velvet flowing majestically from one shoulder. He was dressed, in fact, like the world's richest undertaker, but walked with the kind of steely self-importance reserved for the highest royalty. So he walks directly to West, and then he holds out his hand and he goes, "I am Grand Duke Orso of Talons." And West is I guess the idea was that like West was supposed to like kiss his hand or something, and West just shakes it and he goes, "Yes, Your Excellency, an honor. Don't know if that was the right way to address you, but I am Lord Marshal West, commander of His Majesty's army. Not to be ungrateful, but you are kind of far from home." And he goes, "Yes, well, my daughter is your queen. On her behalf, the people of Talons are prepared to make any sacrifice." So as soon as he heard of the troubles, he prepared an expedition as soon as possible. So his ships and as well as 10,000 of his best troops stand at his disposal, and West goes, "They do." And I like how Orso goes, "Yep, I have taken the liberty of disembarking them. They are engaged in clearing the Gurkish from the southwestern quarter of the city. I believe the Three Farms, that's what they're called. Very cute name. Anyway, you don't need to worry about your western flank, and I wish you the best of luck with your endeavors. If fate wills it, we shall meet each other afterwards, victorious." And he walks away. He just sweeps away.
And everyone's just like in awe. Like, what the fuck just happened?
What the fuck? West just stares after him and he goes, he knows he should be feeling grateful, but he couldn't help but like, there might be I don't know, maybe I'd be happier if Orso never came here. Anyway, but then Brent comes, he goes, Lord Marshal. And he goes, "General Polder." He's about to say something else, but West cuts him off. He goes, "Fuck!" At long bloody last, "Where the fuck is he?" And he's cutting through, he's shouldering people aside. He's like, "I need to see him right now. Where the hell is that bastard?" And then he comes up and he comes upon Polder on a stretcher, held by four muddy and miserable looking members of his staff. He had the expression of a man in peaceful sleep, to the degree that West kept expecting him to snore. But a huge, ragged wound in his chest rather spoiled the effect. Apparently, one of the staffers says that General Polder had led the charge from the front.
a noble sacrifice.
They're a fucking stupid one.
Yeah,
Yep.
the fucking what is it that Baia said? There's plenty of men to lead a charge. It's much harder to find men who can lead.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep. And West just kind of stares at him. You know, he thinks back to like how many times has he actually wished him dead, but now that he is dead, he kind of puts his hand over his face because he's about to get nauseous, and he says, "Damn it," and yeah, and that is where we'll stop for this segment.
I do real quick. I like the fact that I like the fact that Duke Orso arriving is actually quite significant. I remember like reading it and thinking, who the hell is this guy? Oh, he's Teresa's dad. Well, it makes the world feel so much more connected and alive, rather than just being, oh, there's the North, there's the Gurkish, there's the Union, and now this actually makes it feel like kind of like with the auxiliaries inside the Gurkish army. These kinds of moments of talking about peoples from other places and them actually having an impact. I don't know. It just makes the world feel so much more alive. And
Definitely.
And I'd like to hear it as well, world building wise, that they point out that Duke Orso is one of the most powerful men in the world, and 10,000 fresh men who are all professional, who's his professional army, showing up against and to help West is like actually a really big deal because they needed the Navy and they needed those well-trained, unharmed troop. And all of Duke Orso's men are all veterans too. Like they're really good soldiers. They've all been fighting in the Syrian wars for quite some time. So I do feel like this is like a major deal because they would not have. I don't think they would have had such a. Well, we'll see what happens, but it's a pretty significant act of what happens here. And I think that it played out very well.
No, I agree. George, you want to comment on this too?
Yeah, just a little bit earlier, it was just talking about like the description of the Styrian ships being like sort of these sleek, black-hulled kind of like much more like advanced kind of technology, and that actually kind of makes sense if Styria is based on sort of like the Italian city-states like we've thought about before. It actually does make sense because the Italians were the ones that kind of invented this whole, you've got the much deeper drafts and stuff like that, so they can sail faster and further. And actually, it's a very consistent detail.
Well done, Joe. Well done.
Well done.
Well done. So here we'll stop the chapter read through just for the time being, and we'll move on to our next segment. And this one is our character spot. And Harrison, who are we highlighting today? Who are we spotlighting?
Grand Duke Orso. That's how they always talk inside the audiobooks.
Of Talons.
He is.
Go ahead.
We got to touch base on it. He's very imposing. He's got like this air that he is like, I am of the ruling class and you should listen to me. He's organized. He knows how to put on a show, and it's not the last time we see him, but he really is kind of like the hero in this siege here. Mm-hmm. And he's a fairly impressive figure because he's doing this, like, from what we can see here, he's the one who's done all this on his own. He's done it on his own volition. He's just like, this is the right thing to do, and he brings all his men there to go to fight.
Yeah, it's a selfless act, isn't it? Definitely.
Totally.
Sure, he's not getting anything out of this.
Nope. No way. Nuh-uh.
I also like the fact that Joe uses a really scientific sort of turn of phrase to describe how he moves people. It's just like, and staff forced effortlessly aside by his air of command, like iron filings parted by magnetic repulsion. And it's like, that's the most descriptive thing I've ever heard. I know exactly what he's talking about straight away.
You know what? One of my favorite parts about the description of Duke Orso is the man has a goatee. Like, what is he doing with that in a fantasy setting? The man has a goatee.
Are you kidding me? He's got like a goatee, like the pointed beard and mustache goatee. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking like full on Italian noble. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know how, like, if he has like a full like beard or so, but I do know that shit is pointed, and that means goatee in my world.
He looks like Captain Hook.
Captain Hook.
You're not gonna tell me I'm wrong. You know it's true.
If Captain Hook was an Italian,
I'm just saying. I mean, you just give him a goatee.
Yeah. Okay. And what else do we want to talk about with Grand Duke Orso? Has the head of a powerful city-state. It looks like he's the father of Therese. Kind of carries himself in the same manner as Therese does in a bit. But
I would say the most significant thing about Orso is the fact that the man does know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of people inside the series, where they're like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Orso is like, I know exactly what I'm doing, like almost the entire time.
He's extremely competent, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He is more competent than you think he would be.
Yeah. Other than that, okay, so we'll go back to our chapter read through, and we pick up where Glocta says, "Damn it," because again, West had said, "Damn it," after finding out that Polder had died, and now Glocta twisted, his ankle on some steps, and he's not a good deal. He's not doing well. He's in a good deal of pain, and he's climbing up some steps, and we find out that he's climbing up the steps to the Archlector's office. Whoa! And so then he's about to barge in. The Archlector's secretary is like, "Wait a minute, you can't go in there." And then he says, "I am acting on express orders of the king himself." And then And
Even better,
then-
he's like, silence! And everyone's just
Yeah.
like, whoa, what the fuck?
Yeah. And then he looks at the practicals that are guarding the door, and he goes, "Step aside, or be prepared to answer for it." And the practicals are kind of go, okay,
I
never
don't
mind."
get paid enough for this shit.
Yeah, they're like, "Fuck that." And then so they bust in through the door, and Salt's office is the way it's always been, except Salt's not there. He's not the one sitting in the chair. Actually, it's Superior Goyle. Ooh. And I like the description of the progression of Goyle's reaction here. His first reaction is outrage. How dare anyone barge in here like this? His second was confusion. Who would dare to barge in here like this? His third was shock. The cripple, but how? And then his fourth reaction, as he saw Casca and 4 of his men follow Glockta through the door, was horror. Now we're getting somewhere. And Goyle goes, "You, but you're." And Glockta finishes his sentence. He goes, "Slaughtered? Ha! Change of plans, I'm afraid. Where's Salt?" And his eyes are going all over the room. He goes, "Uh-oh." And then he goes, "I'll pay you. Whatever he's paying you, I'll double it." And then Costco holds out his hand. He goes, "I prefer cash." And he goes, "Now? I don't have it with me." And he goes, He goes, "A
He's such a
shame."
villain.
He's a great villain, though. And then he goes, "A shame, but I work on the same principle as a whore. You'll buy no fun with promises, my friend. No fun at all." And then Goyle goes, "Wait!" But then they already, they go ahead and grab him. They force him down, and then here Glockta is getting ready to. He's been looking forward to this, I think, right, guys? How much he
Oh,
hates
yeah.
Goyle. So he goes, he snaps his finger, and this fat mercenary comes, and he grabs Goyle's arm, puts it on the desk, and he goes, "Where is that girl with my instruments?" And Artie kind of just creeps, like, here you go," and puts the case on the table, and then
Well, it's like you said, George, like in the two episodes ago, where he just enlists her as a practical now.
yeah.
He doesn't even treat her like he normally does. He's like, "Woman," and it's partially to protect her because obviously, if he shows weakness, it could be good. But at the same time, he's kind of treating her like an ass. It's kind of funny because it's actually probably not how he actually wants to treat her.
Very true, very true. And he starts talking down to Goyle. He goes, "Oh, I think you know you probably think you know a lot about torture, huh? Well, I don't think you really understand until you've been on the other side of it, actually." And Goyle goes, "Oh, you fucking crazy bastard." And he tells him that he's
You've crossed the line.
Yeah. And then Glockta laughs. He goes, "Line?" And then he goes, "I just spent the night cutting the fingers from one of my friends and then killing another. So don't talk to me about no fucking lines." And he goes, "The one that matters is the one that separates the strong from the weak. The one who asks the questions from the one who answers them. And there are no other lines. That's all in your head." So the manacles, and now the mercenaries, well, not mercenaries, Casca goes, "Eh?"
Yeah, he clearly wasn't expecting this bit in his contract, like.
And he looks at the other mercenaries, and they're all kind of just like shrugging their face. They're like, "I don't know." And he goes, "There really is no replacement for experienced help." So he goes, "I expect we must improvise." And then so he grabs some nails, and he grabs the hammer, and he goes, "Well, I think you can see where we're going with this." And the Goyle goes, "No, wait. And then Goyle presses one of the nails into Goyle's wrist, and then he goes, "Can you someone hold the nail?" And Casca goes, "All right, just careful where you aim." And Glockta goes, "Don't you worry, I'm quite precise." And then Goyle is like, "Still wait." And then he does 3 metallic clicks, and then just drives the nail through into the desk. And ooh man.
Oh, that's awful, but it's so satisfying to see Goyle get brought down.
Oh Lord.
Sniveling, simpering little fucking cunt.
And then, oh God. And then
You don't even feel bad for this one. A lot of the other torture scenes, you're like, "Oh, this is kind of sad. I don't like to see this." And this guy, you're like, "Oh, this is kind of gruesome." But
Yeah,
fuck him up.
like it's Goyle, fuck Goyle, but I'm imagining a nail going to my wrist, and I'm like, and 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 then Glockta tells Goyle is like, "Hey, compared to what you did to your people in England, this is nothing. Just pace yourself. If you keep screaming like this, you're gonna be pooped out at the end." And he grabs he grabs his other this mercenary grabs his other wrist, puts it on the desk, and then he's like, "Do you want the nail?" And he goes, "Yeah, now you're getting the hang of it." And Goyle's like, "Why?" And then he does it again. Click, click, click. Yowza. Ooh boy. And then
I love this kind of little monologue here, where it's like the nail was through, and the one-time scourge of England's penal colonies was pinned flat by both arms. Just an excellent image.
yep. And then Glockta tells him to, he probably should stop struggling, or else he'll just tear the flesh. And then Goyle does the usual, "You'll pay for this, you crippled bastard. Don't think you won't." And then Glockta, he does this whole thing, where he goes, "I've already paid," and he does the whole thing, the spiel where he talks about how his torture sessions with the Gurkish went. Captain.
So if anybody ever says it,
What?
Go ahead, George.
I mean, I really do find this a bit interesting, actually, because this is probably the worst of it, like being stuck in a position where you can't get comfortable for literally months. I mean, that's probably why he's so crippled. Like, his back is fucked up because he's just bent it over.
Mhm.
I mean, that's awful because they force you to do it to yourself.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And then obviously, begging for water, and they kind of just let it drip through the grate, and sometimes they piss instead of giving him water, and he would be grateful for it. So yeah, he's not our boy is not, he's already paid, he thinks in his mind, and I can't say I blame him. So
Absolutely not.
so now he goes, and now he's gonna answer his questions, right? He's like, "What sacrifices are you going to make just to keep Salt's secrets?" And then this is my favorite bit, where Glockta leans down to Goyle and he like whispers in his ear. He goes, "There's a little bit of flesh between your balls and your asshole. You never really see it unless you're a contortionist or unnaturally fond of mirrors. You know what I'm talking about. We spend hours thinking about the area in front of it and almost as long on the area behind, but that little patch of flesh, unfairly ignored. I mean to set that right today. I'm going to start there and work outwards, and believe me, once I'm done, you'll be thinking about that patch of flesh for the rest of your life. Or you'll be thinking about where it used to be, at least. Practical Kosuka, will you be so kind enough to help the superior out of his trousers?" And here Goyle
University!
he waits. He's like, "Please, God, please. He's in a university. He's in a university."
He's like, I always imagine he just starts. He's like about to cry now. He's like,
"Please, anything else but my taint, not the taint."
I do like the fact here as well. We can kind of see that Glockta has been holding back for the entire trilogy. Like all the rest of his tortures are extremely tame compared to what he threatened to do to Goyle here.
It's true, yeah, because he doesn't normally, normally he's like, "Why do I do this?" But with Goyle, he's like, "Finally, I can unleash my full power."
Yeah, he's like,
"Why full hatred?"
He's like, "Why haven't I done this yet?" And so then he asks him, "Okay, so what's he doing there at a time like this?" And then here Goyle goes, I don't know." And he goes, "Trousers, please." And then he's like, "Silver." He's with Silver. And he goes, "University administrator." And Goyle goes, "Oh God, no, the Adeptus Demonic." And everyone goes, "The what?" It's almost like a DJ record scratch, It's like, what? Yeah, he goes. Goyle apparently says that Silver doesn't just run the university; he conducts ... ellipsis experiments. And Glockta goes, "Experiments of what kind?" And quickly, before I nail your tongue to the table, he goes, "Occult experiments. Salt has been giving him money for a long time, since the first of the Magi came calling. Before, maybe." And that's interesting. It will hardly, Glockta, he pauses, he thinks about it. He goes, it's hardly his style, but it does explain why those damn Adepti kept expecting money from him when he first visited the place. Remember that?
And I like that this is like one of many, or the first of many like little loose ends that you didn't really think that much about
Right.
the first time, but it really makes sense when you look back at it, and especially on the first reread.
Mm-hmm. And so then and then Glock asks again, like, what experiments? And he says that Goyle says that Silver can make contact with the other side. Glock goes, what? And Goyle apparently says it's true that he's seen it. He can learn things, secrets that there's no other way of knowing. And now, he has found a way to bring them through. And Goyle goes, them? I mean, Glock goes, them? And he goes, the tellers of secrets, he calls them.
I just was gonna say that on this part here, I find it interesting because it's difficult, to the characters. It's like, oh, okay, tell us the secrets, and Glock even says here in a moment, like, oh, I wouldn't believe it normally, but after everything I've seen, they just might be right. This could be something bad, But to the reader, well, what we find out here very soon is the tellers of secrets are real entities, and the only way that Silva could actually know that they're there is if he actually does communicate with them. There's no way of him knowing otherwise, really. And he knows things, which implies that, there's just a whole implication here that, as a normal human being with the right knowledge, you can totally contact the other side. And it's true.
It might not work out for you, but you can definitely try it.
Yeah.
Right.
I just think that's very interesting that it is true, because when you see your tellers of secrets, I mean, that is a fact. That is one thing that they're called.
Yeah. And you don't really know about the tellers of secrets unless you're either very well versed with the historical material kind of thing, or like that side of learning the arts, or you've been chilling and talking to them, you've been shooting the shit.
Yeah.
And George, just I guess cut out the bit where we kind of were talking like about where we were.
Yeah.
I got to the tellers of secrets, so just cut out that part and then pick up from where Harrison started talking.
Okay.
Glock he goes, so we're talking about demons then, huh? And Goyle says that he can send them against his enemies. Apparently, that's what Silver says, against the Archlector's enemies, and they are ready to do it. And now Glock is kind of he's thinking, wait a minute, a year ago I would have laughed at this and nailed him to the ceiling, but things are different now. They went through the house of the Maker, they saw Shekel. If there are eaters, if there are magi, why wouldn't there be demons? How could there not be? He goes, what enemies? And he says, and Goyle says, the High Justice, the first of the magi, the king. Those little words that's all he needed to know. He's like, ooh, that's treason. Ooh, daddy, yeah. So he goes,
which is funny. He could have just, he doesn't need him to actually confess. It's been shown multiple times, but it is funny that he's like, oh, yay, thank God it's real this time.
It's all he needs. Every time he's gotten a confession from somebody, he needed them to actually say it before he had them sign anything.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that. So it's like he broke them first. At least either broke them and broke them to lie, or at least got them to tell the truth. Once he hears it, that's all he needs. So there seems to be some kind of like requirement for verbal confirmation or something.
I think that's all just Glock's self. Think about like the dentist.
Well, remember the dentist, yeah, but he needed him to verbally say it too.
I know he needed it. He wanted him to verbally say it, but
right. Not okay. Wanted, needed. Okay, all right, we got you. I got you. Anyway,
I just want to say as well, I love that this whole time, every single time that Glock suggests something to Archlector Salt about something occult happening, Salt's just like, no, don't be silly. This is ridiculous. Don't come to me with that bullshit. And then the whole time he actually believes it.
Yeah. In the meanwhile, he apparently Salt's a fucking Wiccan. Like he's just out here. Just doing these fucking rituals with crystals and shit. This goofball.
He does give that hint early on. He's like, I'm already consulting someone for that.
Oh God. And then so Glock turns to Artie. He goes, that's all I need. He goes, would you be so kind to prepare a paper of confession? And Artie kind of just stares at him and goes, what? What do I write? And just something like, oh, I don't know. I, Superior Goyle, confess to being an accomplice in a treasonous plot of His Eminence, Archlector Salt, to How do I say? Use diabolical arts against His Majesty the King and members of his close council. And she goes, okay. And she starts writing it out. Blah, 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 and it's scattering specks of ink and everything. She asks him, is this good enough? And he looks at it and he remembers the beautiful documents that practical Frost used to prepare. The elegant flowing script, the immaculate wording, each paper confession, a work of art. And Glocta stares sadly down at this ink-spotted daub. Daub.
He's like, what a pale imitation.
Oh, why are they
But it'll
betraying
do.
him, my boys? He goes, all right. He says, but a brief step from unreadable, but it will serve. And he
A
tells
brief-
Goyle, I love that. He tells Goyle to sign it. Goyle kind of like sobs, sniffs, and he just scrawled his name at the bottom of the page as best as he could with his arm nailed. And he goes, excellent. Pull those nails and find some sort of bandage. He doesn't want him to bleed to death. And then gag him because he's heard enough. And we'll take him with us to the High Justice. And he goes, wah, wah, wah. They just gag him. And then they
Is that what gagging sounds like? Okay.
I imagine it's like, where? Like that.
It's what would they sub in there too? Was an old sock from one of the mercenaries.
I imagine what if they kept Brother Longfoot's sock from the foot that doesn't work anymore?
Oh.
These socks have traveled very far, very far indeed. These are in fact my favorite pair of socks.
And now
Goes
they have
on.
traveled. Now they have traveled to the back of your throat. So no. So then that he starts thinking now about the university, and he goes, "Oh man, I wonder there's all kind of crazy shit's going on over there. What is going on in there?" And here we cut to Giselle's perspective. And Giselle's first words are, "What is going on out there?" And he's walking up and down the roof of the Tower of Chains. He's hoping that he's giving Cage Tiger, but really he's giving criminal on the morning of his own hanging. So- oh man! And then,
I love how Giselle is so like he's still vain. Like at this point, he's still like, "Oh God, I hope I look okay."
and then apparently what he's looking at is the carnage of what's happened so far. There's a lot of smoke everywhere. There's fighting in the four corners, up the middle way, throughout the central part of the city, as on land and by sea. There at turns there was all hope was lost, and then they were on the verge of deliverance. But one thing there's no doubt is that beyond the moat of the Agrion, the Gurkish efforts continued ominously unabated. They keep peppering them with flatbow bolts, but for every corpse that the Gurkish have left, every wounded man dragged away, 5 more would take its place.
Also, I love that vomits out.
That was a good one.
They're vomiting out. They're not just coming. They're vomiting out.
Yeah. And there's they're hiding behind the wooden screens. They're shooting up arrows towards the battlement. There's they got the drums going. It's a party down there. And then Giselle's starting to notice some other strange figures down there. Tall, graceful figures, conspicuous in pearly white armor, edged with gold. And they were moving along the Gurkish soldiers, pointing, ordering, directing. Sometimes they would point towards the bridge that led to the west gate of the Agrion. And he started kind of thinking about, Kalul's 100 words. He goes, are these them? Are they here? He goes, I don't know what's going on here. He says, if I didn't know any better, I would have said that they were preparing for an assault. And the Varus goes, there's no case for alarm. Our defenses are impregnable. But his voice is quivering. So he's more like, there's no case for alarms. Our defenses are impregnable. I imagine.
I love that. I love how Varus, like, despite being this like hardened military leader, is just like absolutely falling apart.
Yeah, because
He's never seen anything like this.
Because this is a last stand for them, at least. And
It is, yeah.
And then one of the members of his staff, goes, down there, and they point. They look through their eyeglasses and everything, and then there's this giant cart that has been pulled up the streets. It's like a wooden house on wheels, and it's covered of plates of metal. And even now, Gurkish soldiers were loading barrels onto it. and being directed by two people in white armor. And somebody said, "Oh yeah, explosive powder." So said
Unhelpfully.
unhelpfully, and then Giselle feels Morovia's hand on his arm, and he goes, "Your Majesty, it might be best if you were to retire." And Giselle goes, "If I'm not safe out here, then where the hell would I be out of danger? Do you think?" And then Morovia says, "Marshal West will soon deliver us. I am sure of it. But in the meantime, the palace is very much the safest place. So I will accompany you. And at my age, I fear I will be of little use here at the walls." And Gorse, Burmadan Gorse, he comes, he holds out a hand, he goes, "This way." And
This way.
then we, yeah, this way. That's right. How could I be so silly? And then we switch over to Glock's perspective again. "This way," he says, or "this way." And everyone's following after him. And then there's only one secretary hanging out the outside the office of the High Justice, and he goes, "I think his worship is busy. Hello." And then Glock goes, "Oh no, don't you worry about this. He's gonna want to see me. Trust me." And then he grabs the doorknob, and the metal is super duper cold. Like, hello, what? Why is it so cold? And then he opens the door a bit, and then it feels even colder in the room. And then he walks in, and apparently all of the furniture, the paneling, the window panes, everything is glittering with hoarfrost, like the beginnings
If
of
anybody wants to know,
the shaving.
hoarfrost,
It's like the shavings of ice, the beginnings of ice forming, right?
hoarfrost specifically is when the water vapor in the air freezes, which
There
has
you
to be very, very, very cold for it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the water has to be very slutty.
Exactly.
Okay, different spelling, but sure, Harrison. I love that.
Hoarfrost.
Well, you said exactly. You just rolled with it, George. You said exactly.
Yeah,
Man, I'm here for anything.
and then there's more description of like legal papers are flying around the whole place. There's a bottle of wine on a table that had been shattered. And Glockta goes, "What the fuck is going on?" And a long snaking length of black tubing was frozen to the paneling like a string of sausages left in the snow. There was patches of black ice in the books, on the desk, on the carpet. There were pink fragments frozen to the ceiling, long white splinters frozen to the floor. And Glockta, he asked himself in his mind, he goes, "Human remains? A large chunk of icy flesh, partly coated in rime." What's rime? R-I-M-E? That's like one of the few times I've seen that word.
So it's a bit of a weird one. So rime is specifically ice that builds up when a wind is blowing in a certain direction.
Interesting. I wonder if that's a British term because I haven't heard that.
It's very archaic. Rime is very archaic.
Okay, archaic. So then it's in the middle of the desk. He kind of like looks at it, and it kind of looks like a mouth with some teeth attached, an ear and an eye, some strands of long beard, enough for Glock to recognize whose parts were scattered around into the entire room. Who else but his last hope, his third suitor, High Justice Morovia. And Casca clears his throat. He goes, "Seems that there's something to your friend Silber's claims after all." And it's like a bit of an understatement. And then the secretary comes in, fussing up, and then he sees what happens, and he goes, and he just like, he gets like sick. He throws up outside, and then Glockta says that he doubts that the High Justice will be lending any assistance. And Casca goes, "Of course, yeah, true, but isn't it getting a little bit of late in the day for your papers and so forth anyway? The Gurkish are coming, so if you got scores to settle, let's get them done now before the Gurkish, come up all over the hills." And so then basically they come up with the plan to, go towards the university. Glockta, he asks Casca if he can still count on him, and he goes, "Yeah, of course. Although I charge double once diabolical arts are involved." And he goes, "How does triple sound?" Glockta goes, "How does triple sound?" And Casca goes, "Well, it sounds great." And he says, "How about your men? Are they reliable?" And he goes, "They're still waiting for 4/5 of their pay. Until they get it, I would trust any of them with my life." So, all right, now we're prepared. Let's get going. So to the university, His Eminence never liked to be kept waiting, and that's the end of that chapter.
I do like just before we start the ending.
Mm,
I love the
mm,
bit where he's just like, just a little further now, my toeless beauty. Just a few more shuddering steps.
I I love too how Koska basically says, "Listen, Galacta, my man, I like working with you, and you're gonna pay me more money. That's great, but listen, we need to get the show moving, okay? Because we're all about to fucking die. Stop it with the
Mm.
papers. Let's go in there, one last blaze of glory. If we take him out, we take him out. If we don't, we die. Whatever. Who cares? But let's make let's do it. And now is the time for action."
mm.
And Galacta's like, "Oh, I like it. Okay." I just love that
Yeah.
Koska like kind of makes the call and is a
Yeah.
bit of inspiring right here.
I
Absolutely.
mean, we know as Koska says, he's just not. He doesn't balk in the face of danger. Like any normal person would walk into this room and see this guy that's been torn to shreds by presumably what is a demon, and he's just like, "Yeah, let's get on with it."
He doesn't even question it.
No.
Does not. It does not. So let's go ahead and let's talk about this chapter. Let's rate it. I guess who wants to go first?
You go first, Jeff.
Okay. Well, I'll rate this chapter. It's a great chapter to me. I'll give it a 8 out of 9 fingers. Just love the various point of views and this. I mean, again, we're talking very like slow uh plot movement. I guess you could say not a lot, but just the character building is still it's compounding. Um, Curious as we just saw High Justice Morovia take Giselle to a safe place, and apparently he did. What's going on there? We should figure that out. I wonder.
Obviously, twin brother.
Oh, snaps! Twin brothers. Okay, okay. Interesting. But Galacta, Galacta did obviously he was the star of this chapter. Because he had like what 2 or 3 segments. Then we had Giselle, we had Dogman, we had West, but just like Dogman trying to be the peacemaker for Shivers and failing, at least or seeming to fail, and still being awed as at the scale of the building in Adjua. And funny enough, like pondering why would they even want England? It's a fucking shithole. West doing great at logistics, being confounded at Grand Duke Orso's appearance, and being fucking crestfallen at finding out that Polder died. Leading that charge like a brave motherfucker, because we saw that coming. That dude, he couldn't wait to charge. That dude was frothing at the mouth at that in the war tent. And
Chomping at the bit.
Chomp. He drove from back over the border. And then obviously, Giselle kind of being helpless but vain, and also like a little bit like, is that coming for me? I think I should like go, guys. And then we have Glocta obviously with his investigations, doot 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 doot, doot, and escaping from the sewers, letting Longfoot go, you know, threatening Goyle's taint, and then finding out that Morovia has been dispatched in some ways. I really enjoyed this chapter, so 8 out of 9 for me.
I reckon I'm gonna go exactly the same. I'm gonna go for an 8 out of 9. I absolutely loved the Octopods. I love the fact that he's getting this final revenge. Like he's always just like acting on the orders of the Archlector and Valent and Bulk throughout the whole trilogy, and now he's taken the onus for himself, and he's just like, no, I'm gonna do what I want to do. I'm gonna fuck up Goyle. I'm gonna go and get the Archlector. It's my time. Brilliant. So yeah, 8 out of 9.
I think I'm also gonna give it an 8 out of 9. You guys pretty much covered it. It's really well written. There's a really good tension that starts to build up with everything going on, and that he's been building it up, like the whole set piece and scene and everything like that. But now where things are happening, Morovia's dead, so who the fuck is with Giselle? And we have, Polder died. The Styrians are here. Everything kind of hangs in the balance at the moment, and he does such a good job at building it up, and it makes it to where at this point in the story, like it's difficult not to just like keep turning the page, And so between the writing, the setup, I think it deserves to be one of the better chapters, I think.
Love that. Love that
Oh,
for us.
and I do love how every scene ends. He does this. He gets better at it. But I love how every single time a POV gets done, it transitions into the next POV. Like they're all kind of connected in that way. Damn it! Damn it!
Yeah,
We need to
yeah,
get a move on. We need to get a move on. You know, things like that.
yeah. It's like I was saying earlier. That's one. It's one of his like the characteristics of Joe's writing as he develops, right? That he has those like similar. Not they're not all the same, but there are different instances. Like in this case, it's the continuing the dialogue, right? Then it's just other things that we see like in later books. That's pretty fucking cool, right?
And if you think about it, this is basically the first, or the only like proper climax in the book where all of these things are coming together. Like the first two books, there's an individual climax for like individual characters in a certain situation, but this is really, really we can see Joe's writing developing here, like you said, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, so we got a trifecta going on. I love that for us, uh, as the kids say. Uh, so let's move on to our final segment, which is our community interaction segment. Harrison, take it away.
Yeah, so about a month ago, we had mentioned it, and we were going to talk about it, and we never did because none of us watched it, and we've all been dealing with stuff. So, but I figured better late than never, and that we were just going to touch base with the Daniel Green interview with Brandon Sanderson and Joe Abercrombie. If you go to YouTube and just look up, Daniel Green, Joe Abercrombie, Sanderson interview, it should pop up no problem. It's a really good interview. Sanderson and Joe kind of just play off each other. They do mostly, they just ask each other questions at most of the points. But as for First Law stuff, there was just some interesting things about Joe himself that I thought might be cool to talk about. Did you guys end up watching that interview?
I have not. I need to get on that.
Yeah.
I did, but it was like 3 weeks ago at this point. I have forgotten most of it, to be honest.
You fool!
I know I failed so badly.
Yeah, it's like a reminder one, right? Everybody who already listened to it's going to be reminded. One a small detail I caught I was telling George about the other day is when they were talking about animation and possible avenues for that. Both Sanderson and Joe are basically like, yeah, there's definitely potential, but it's not quite there yet for the things we want to do. But Joe also said that he's been working on something that might that has to do with animation. I don't know what that means. He definitely was being careful.
I definitely have an interesting idea about that because we know that Joe Abercrombie worked on a few episodes of Love, Death, and Robots.
And it might just be that. He might just be working on the next season with them.
Yeah, but it would be interesting because all of those episodes are made by different studios, aren't they? So it would be interesting if through the course of working on that, he's sort of, delved a little bit more into that world and found some people that might be willing to do an adaptation.
Yeah, of some kind, and I think that would be really cool. He also basically him and Sanderson both talked about how they have been giving they've both done many pitches to people, and I did think it was funny. It's very true. It's the same reason whenever like their ideas for why pitching is hard. Like for the First Law, when you start telling people about it, it's very difficult to make it sound interesting because, as Joe says, well, there's a wizard, and he's not quite like your other wizards. He's kind of bad, but like if you say that, then you're giving it away, so you can't really say that at first. And then you're like, well, there's this guy, and he's got like a sword, and he's like the hero, but he's not really the main character. And then there's this other guy who's young and naive and has to learn about how the world really. Now this is not going well.
Yeah, it sounds like a Rick and Morty skit.
Yeah, it sounds like the most bland shit. So, the point is you're trying to tell your friends about the First Law and you can't figure out a good way to tell them. Well, that's okay because Joe can't figure out the way to tell people either.
I mean, we know that I've seen a few previous interviews with Joe Abercrombie, and he said that he'd been to like nearly every single major publisher in the UK, and they've all just been like, no.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. And he meant specifically for like pitching scripts for movies and things like that. So, he's obviously been working on the Spectre of Cold thing for a while, or in some form, for a while. Otherwise, he wouldn't have talked about how tough it's been to pitch ideas for movies and scripts and screenwriting and all that. So, he also talked about video games. He did just this was a month ago. So Joseph started playing Baldur's Gate 3. So, yes. He also
One
said
of
he was playing Elden Ring beforehand. Him and Sanderson both were, and Joe Abercrombie is definitely one of those people that if you game with him, he's going to use every exploit to play the game. He doesn't play by the rules, which isn't surprising. He said in Elden Ring that he found like a really good sword that did what he wanted to do, and he just spammed that attack the entire campaign so he could win.
That is hilarious. Love that though.
It's a completely valid tactic in Elden Ring.
Yeah.
I do support that.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
He's the kind of guy in Baldur's Gate 3 who just used Thunderwave to knock everybody off a cliff and just win.
Yes, he absolutely would, and he would do it every time. He just no, like I'm gonna make this epic. What's the easiest way to win? There's a cliff right here. So, respect for that. I totally understand. And then the only other thing was Daniel Green brought up AI, and Joe had a really good point in saying, I don't think it should replace anybody's jobs, but we can use it to make other people's jobs easier. And with the kinds of things that it can do, it might make certain mediums, like bigger productions, especially with CGI or animation, make them easier, because the AI can generate background stuff a lot easier. Instead of having to animate an entire city by yourself, you now have an AI assistant who's going to help you build it. So you can say what you will about AI. We over here at Circle the World are pro AI. At least, I mean, you can't stop it. It's going to come no matter what. So you might as well bow down to them now, you know?
Yeah, change of the times, you fucking breakers.
Anyways, that was kind of the basics of that. Just some interesting stuff. It was a good interview. You should go watch it yourself. But other than that, that's all I have to say.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Harrison. Appreciate it. All right. So that's it, folks. That's our show, everyone. We want to thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. As you all know, this is a passion project for the three of us, and your support really does mean a lot to us.
Join us next time as we cover Open the Box and Dark Paths.
And make sure you follow us on all of our social media. We've recently started posting again on Instagram and Twitter, and there's always something interesting to look at on the subreddit and on House of the Meme Maker.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any podcast app that you prefer. And please make sure to rate and review this podcast. Thank you all again for listening.
Not good enough. Trousers, please.